Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from OnlinePhotographyTraining.com. Welcome to my video series, Mastering Lightroom Classic CC. In this video, we're going to talk about the crop tool. Now, of course, in our last video, I went over the basic panel, and for this image, I did do some basic panel adjustments. And one would think, if I was going to do these videos in a sequential order, that after I did the basic panel video, I would do a tone curve video. Well, I am jumping around a little bit, and there is a reason for that. And at the end of the video, I'll talk about why I'm jumping around. And as I mentioned, we're going to jump over to the crop tool. And the crop tool is up here in the tool well. Right above all these different panels is the tool well. And the crop tool is the furthermost left tool. And to turn it on, you could just click on it, or you could see there's a keyboard shortcut of R. So we'll open up the crop tool, and you can see there's not a lot to it visually, but actually you could do a lot with the crop tool, and there's a lot of hidden functionality. Now, one thing you could do with the crop tool is straighten the image, and you can see this image is very crooked. And there are three different ways you could straighten the image, and you could use whichever way works best for you and for your image. The first way is probably the most obvious way. There is a slider right here, and we could just move this slider. And you can see as I move the slider left and right, we're tilting the image, rotating the image to straighten it. So you could just do that visually. Just move this slider around, and hopefully you got it straight. Now I'm going to reset it. Another way you could straighten the image is with the auto button. You could click this, and Lightroom will use its intelligence and straighten the image, hopefully. Doesn't always work. So try that. Usually that's the quickest way if it works. So you might want to try that first. I'm going to reset it again. Now the third way to straighten the image is with this little level right here. That's a level tool. Just click on it, and you can see your cursor turns into the level. Now what you need to do is just draw on your picture. You want to draw on something that is in the scene that should be perfectly horizontal, or something that is in the scene that should be perfectly vertical. Now usually with a landscape shot, you'll have the horizon. Well, not usually, but often in a landscape shot, you'll have the horizon in the image, and that would be a nice horizontal line. Now in this image, I kind of have part of what could be said is a horizon. It would be this line that is at the bottom of the break wall out here. So it doesn't go all the way across, and usually for this tool to be most accurate, you'd like to draw the longest line possible. For this image, it doesn't look like I could draw a very long line. I could go from about here, so I'll click with the left mouse button and just draw, holding the left mouse button in to the end, and you could see you could go off the screen to try to level it or make it go along that horizontal to right about there, and then let go of the left mouse button, and it will automatically straighten your image. And that's a very convenient and useful way to straighten the image. Now at the very top I said there were 3 ways to straighten your image. Well, I was actually wrong. There's actually 4 ways. We're going to reset this again. The fourth way you could straighten your image is if you take your cursor and just push it off the image a little bit to the right, you could see that the cursor will turn into a curved double arrow. When your cursor turns into that curved double arrow, click with the left mouse button, and you'll see that you get this grid pattern, and you could drag your mouse up or down to straighten the image. And again, this is another way you could visually straighten your image like that. So hopefully that tight grid of lines will help you visually straighten the image. And I'd say that that works pretty good right there. So I think that's pretty good. That's straight enough. Let's put it that way. And if you come in, you could just come in and always readjust it if you feel it's off a little bit. So good. Now, after we've straightened the image, we could crop the image. there's a lot of hidden tools to help you crop your image. The first is a crop overlay. Now, as you look at the image, hopefully you could see it in the video, you can see there's a very light outline of lines. It's in the rule of thirds. So these lines help you crop your image to a rule of thirds overlay. And you could see it there. Well, you could change that overlay. There's a lot of different overlays in Lightroom. To change it, hit the O key on your keyboard, O for overlay. I'll hit it once, and you can see that we have this kind of diagonal line pattern. And a lot of people like to use this to try to separate elements out. So you have like basically 3 areas where you could put your image elements into when you crop. Hit the O key again, and you have this kind of triangle pattern. This is a way for you to help align things along the diagonal and put things at points of interest. And usually with these overlays, a point of interest will be wherever 2 lines intersect. So you'd like something there and like something there, if you could. Now, for some of these overlays, you could flip them. We have this diagonal going from the lower left to the upper right. Well, this specific overlay could go a different way. And if you'd like to flip this specific overlay, hold the Shift key in, then hit the O key. And you can see now I've put it along the other diagonal. So it's going this way. So O will shift from overlay to overlay or change your overlay from one to the next. Shift O will take the current overlay you're on, and if there is an available variant of that overlay, it will flip it like I did here. So I'm going to hit O again to go to the next overlay, and this is a golden ratio. You can see it's similar to rule of thirds, but instead of being 1/3 spaces across, this is roughly, I believe, something like, I don't know, 40, 20, 40, going horizontally and vertically. We could hit the O key again, and we have the golden spiral. Now this is an overlay that you could shift. You could see that the spiral is terminating over here, and that's where you would want to put a point of interest. Well, you could flip this again by hitting Shift and O. So we could flip it. We could just keep flipping it all around to get this spiral where we want it. Hit the O key again, and we have some crop lines. So you have some common crop lines. I happen to have the 4x3, 4x5, 1:1, 16:10 line showing, 2x3 line showing. You could actually add more to this if you go up to Tools, and we go to Crop Guide Overlay, and then down to Choose Aspect Ratios. You could see I could add 8.5:11, I could add 5:7, and I could add 16:9. So I could have those all checked, and they'll all be there. Personally, I never use those, but they're there. We'll hit O key again, and we have that tight grid pattern that helped us straighten the image. And we hit O, and we're back to the beginning to rule of thirds. So you could use whichever crop overlay guide helps you crop your image. Now, I picked the guide I want. I'm going to use rule of thirds. Now, I'm going to crop this image. So you could crop it, any which way you want. There's all different ways we could crop it. One thing I should mention right off the bat is when you turn on the crop overlay, it's going to default to the dimensions that your sensor is. So I shot this with a 2:3 sensor or 3:2 sensored camera. So I have this 2:3 ratio. So that's kind of the default. And one thing you should look at over here, there's a little padlock. Now, whenever I go in here to this crop overlay now and I grab any of these handles, see there's handles all the way around the crop overlay. If I just grab a corner handle here and pull in, it's going to keep it at that 2:3 ratio. So it won't come out of that ratio. If I unlock the padlock, I could come in here and I could really come and make it a custom ratio, not necessarily 2:3 anymore. So that padlock locks in the ratio you're using. And you could change the ratio you're using with this drop down right here. You can see we have 1:1, and it will go to square then. 4:5. It also says 8:10. And one thing I should talk about, I often get emails from folks who send their images into a lab to be printed, and they're disappointed because they have parts of their image got cropped out. Well, if you're shooting with a camera with a 2:3 or a 3:2 ratioed sensor, and you want to get an 8:10 printed, an 8:10 isn't in that same ratio. So if you use the 4:5 to 8:10 guide, you could see that it's going to lose some. Now, it kind of defaulted to the vertical orientation. I could flip this to the horizontal orientation by hitting the X key on the keyboard, and now it flipped it horizontally. And even if I grab these and pull them out, now you can see that it's keeping that ratio of 4:5 or 8:10, and then you could take the image and drag it around. But you could see how now if I get this image printed as an 8:10, I'm going to lose some of the image. So you should probably crop ahead of time before you send the image to be printed. Whatever size print you're making, figure out what that ratio is, then come over here to this drop down and use the appropriate ratio to crop your image ahead of time, so you could dictate to the lab what pixels you want to keep and what pixels you want to get rid of. So you can see that that was the 4:5, 8:10, we have an 8.5:11, 5:7. So you could come through in here and do whatever you like. I'm going to stay with my default 2:3 for this specific camera. And then I could again come in here and pull out the sides. Now, then I could, oops, I closed that accidentally. You could then drag your image around to better crop it. Whatever works, basically, to get the image cropped to your liking. Now, one thing I should say real quick, there's a little check mark or checkbox right here, constrain to image. A lot of times you'll crop your image, but then you'll do lens corrections afterwards. And sometimes when Lightroom corrects the image for distortion, you'll get blank pixels in your crop. And if you click this box, constrain to image, it will bring your crops just small enough so that you don't have any blank pixels in the shot. 99 times out of 100 you'll click that and nothing's going to happen. But there are times when you do some lens corrections where that will come into play, so be aware of that. Now, finally, the other way you could crop the image is with this tool right here, this little angle tool. Click on that and your cursor turns into this angle, and you could come in here and then just draw on the image the crop you want, like that. Then I could kind of move it around and maybe something like that. And then when you're satisfied that you like your crop, you could just hit the enter key, or you could just close the crop tool by clicking right there. So it's an okay crop, and actually it kind of looks crooked now, doesn't it, when I did that. So I could come in here and let's try using this level to straighten it, using it this way. It didn't move one bit, so I guess it is straight. So there's that. Now the other thing I just wanted to show you very quickly, we mentioned when we hit that O key, we cycle through all these different overlays. Well, I mentioned I never use this overlay. And to tell you the truth, I don't use that overlay, and I don't use that overlay. Sometimes use that overlay, and I use that overlay. Well, I don't have to have those active, meaning if I don't want them there when I hit the O key, I could go up here to Tools, Crop Guide Overlay, then down to Choose Overlays to Cycle, and I could then get rid of the ones that I don't use. So I use the grid, I use the rule of thirds, I don't use that diagonal, I don't use that triangle, I use the golden ratio, golden spiral, and aspect ratios, don't use that. So we'll click OK. Now, when I hit the O key, it will only cycle through the ones I picked. So that is a lot faster and makes my workflow much more efficient. So again, I could come in here. I have the padlock locked. So I'm keeping my 2:3 aspect ratio image. Let's say I'm printing an 8x12. 8x12 is in the 2:3 aspect ratio. So I keep that padlock locked. And I like it. I have the grain silo or the grain elevator right on this rule of thirds point of intersection. So I kind of like that. Kind of got this bleeding in a little bit over there, and I don't like that. So I'm just going to move it in just enough to eliminate this grain silo from the equation. The sky is awesome. So let's get more sky in there to a point maybe right there. And like that. So I like that. I'll just click that and close the box. And there's a crop for a really poorly executed shot. That's why I chose it for the crop tool video, because it was really poorly done. And again, it still looks crooked to me. Seems like it should be going this way. Not sure why. Maybe my head's crooked. A lot of times I'll tell you the truth, I labor over getting the image perfectly straight. And I do use a level in my camera that is actually in the viewfinder that I could look, that I actually will shoot to make sure it's level when I'm not using a tripod. When I am using a tripod, there's bubble levels on my tripod. I'm really a stickler for making sure the image is level. I'm not sure why I was so crazy on this image. This is, I think, the first day I went out shooting with my new Nikon D850, and I think I was playing with it a little bit, not really paying attention to what I was doing. And I kind of ruined a great opportunity because, as you can see, the sky here looks like cotton candy. So that would have been a great shot. So if you want to start over, hit this reset button right here. I'm not going to, but you could then click that and it will just reset the image. And you could start cropping from the beginning. And again, I just want to remind you is hit the X key on your keyboard to flip your crop from vertical to horizontal. And it kind of moved me in a little bit, but that's all right. Sometimes it won't hold its original dimensions that you had when you do that. So be aware of that. So let's go with that. And we'll hit enter and we'll say we're done. So that is everything you need to know about the crop tool in Lightroom. Now, I did mention at the beginning that I'm jumping around, and I'm actually doing that for a reason. I recently read a book on teaching and learning, and the type of learning or teaching for Lightroom is really segmented, meaning I'm doing it in multiple videos and we're covering a new topic in every video. And the way I did it in the past, I went in a sequential manner. So I would do the basic panel, then I do the tone curve, then I do the HSL panel and stuff like that. And it worked well. Everyone seemed to like my videos, and I, was happy with it. But after reading these new innovations in teaching, people actually learn faster and retain the knowledge if you jump around a little bit and you don't go in sequential order with segmented material. So I have segmented material, but if I don't go into, if I don't go in a sequential order, people retain that knowledge a little more and they become better at it. So my whole goal here is to make you great at using Lightroom. So that's why we're jumping around a little bit. And there's another advantage. Typically, when people process their image, they don't go in sequential order. We jump around. Usually, or not everyone, but most people, I think, they'll have an image and they're not sure they like it. So they go to the basic panel first and they just do some basic processing like I did on this image. Hey, I kind of like that sky. Okay, let's process it some more. Well, it's really crooked. Let's go up to the crop tool. So we're jumping around. That's how we process our image. And then we'll see what the next issue is with the image. Maybe it's lens corrections or maybe it's noise, and we'll jump to either the lens correction tab or the detail tab. So we actually do jump around when we're doing our normal everyday workflow. So hopefully this new way I'm teaching Lightroom helps you learn Lightroom and helps you retain all the information, all that stuff I give you about the crop overlays and how to change them and how to flip them and all that other stuff. And makes you a master at using Lightroom. Thank you, everyone that watches my videos. I truly do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.